Stan Gibilisco here to explain the meaning of the term half power points, especially in regards to amateur radio applications. This term can have two meanings or can apply to two situations especially. There could be more, but most commonly it applies to antennas and to signal selectivity curves. Antennas shown here in an example on the left, and selectivity curve is shown in an example on the right. Half power points meaning minus 3 decibels. That means exactly half as much power, 50%. A 2-to-1 power ratio represents a 3 decibel increase or decrease. So if you go 3 decibels down, then that is an attenuation of 3 decibels. That means you're at half the power level that you were at 0 decibels. And when the attenuation falls to 3 decibels, you can measure the width, the bandwidth, and determine the ratio of the bandwidth at 0 decibels to the bandwidth at 3 decibels down. That gives you an idea of the shape factor of the selectivity curve. That's here on the right. On the left, we have an example of a directional antenna pattern. This looks most likely to be a Yagi or quad type antenna, pointed north. The major lobe pointed north. 0 decibels represented by the outer circle, that's the maximum gain. 3 decibels down would be the next circle in, and the half power points you could measure as an angle between these two lines. You could say the beam width at the half power points is, that looks to be like maybe 45 degrees or so, 22.5 on this side and 22.5 on this side. So this particular Yagi or quad antenna would have a major lobe with a beam width at the half power points of 45 degrees, the angle between these two lines going out to the half power points. Here the bandwidth looks like it would be at the half power points about, looks like about 5 kilohertz this way and 5 kilohertz that way relative to the center, so it would be a 10 kilohertz wide filter at the half power points. That sounds like a filter that you would use for a standard ham radio frequency modulation, narrowband frequency modulation signal, or God forbid, an AM signal, an amplitude modulation signal. You might hear a few AM signals. Are they even legal anymore on the high frequency bands? I'm not sure if standard amplitude modulation emission is even legal anymore it's a pretty wide bandwidth, but this would be more than enough for that. In fact, it would probably be sufficient for most standard AM broadcast receivers, unless you want to receive high fidelity music, in which case if you're on an AM receiver, you're kind of behind the times, my friend. So that's the meaning basically of half power points. It's points in some curve, directionality as an example on the left and selectivity as an example on the right, at which the attenuation gets to 3 decibels down with respect to the maximum power that you get from either the directional pattern or the selectivity curve. When you lose half the power, you get to the half power point. That's minus 3 dB or 3 decibels down, an attenuation of 3 decibels. So, I hope maybe you get a little better idea with my convoluted, absent-minded, old fuddy-duddy-ish old-timer explanation of half power points in ham radio. My call sign ought to give away my old-timer status. Amateur radio station W1GV. Whiskey 1, good vibrations, saying 73, which means best regards, and so long, which, even at the half power points on a CW signal, means da-da-da-da-da-da.